The interview was in 45 minutes, and Tom Bradley's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd memorized every answer, pressed his only suit until the creases looked sharp enough to make an impression, and promised his 8-year-old daughter that this time, Dad would come home with good news. The engine of his 15-year-old sedan coughed and sputtered to life, sounding like it might die halfway through the 20-mile drive, but it had to make it. This job was their last chance before the eviction notice became reality. The highway stretched empty ahead, morning sunlight cutting through the windshield, when he saw her. A woman in a business suit standing beside a luxury car with a flat tire, phone pressed to her ear, panic written all over her face. Tom's foot hovered over the gas pedal. He knew the equation. Stopping to help meant losing everything he'd fought for. Driving on meant abandoning someone who needed him. The decision took 3 seconds. He pulled over to the shoulder. How ironic, he thought, that when you're already drowning, you still reach out to save someone who seems to have everything you dream of, everything that might forever remain just a dream. He shook his head once, then stepped out of the car. Perhaps fate had already drawn more dark chapters ahead for him. Tom's work boots crunched on the gravel shoulder as he approached the sleek black Mercedes. The woman turned, her eyes widening with a mixture of relief and suspicion. Her suit probably cost more than his rent, and the watch on her wrist caught the sunlight like it wanted everyone to know its price tag. She lowered the phone slightly, studying him with the careful assessment of someone who'd learned not to trust too easily. "Flat tire?" Tom asked, keeping his distance, hands visible. He'd learned that looking like he did, worn jacket, calloused hands, a face that showed every sleepless night, made people nervous in situations like this. "Yes, I..." She glanced at her phone, then back at the tire, then at him. "My driver usually handles this, but he called in sick, and I have a meeting downtown in less than an hour, and the tow service says 45 minutes. She stopped herself, seeming to realize she was explaining her life to a stranger on the highway. Tom nodded toward the trunk. "You have a spare?" She blinked. "I assume so?" Of course she didn't know. People who drove cars like this never changed their own tires. Tom walked to the trunk, and after a moment's hesitation, she pressed a button on her key fob. The trunk lifted with a soft hydraulic whisper, revealing a spare tire that had probably never seen daylight, and a jack that looked like it came from a spaceship. At least it was there. "I can have this done in 15 minutes, Tom said, already pulling off his jacket. The morning air was cool, but he'd be sweating soon enough. "You'll make your meeting. I can't ask you to..." "You didn't ask," I stopped. He knelt beside the flat tire, fitting the jack into place. Besides, anyone would do the same. He felt her watching him as he worked, and he wondered what she saw. A guy in a cheap suit with grease under his nails, probably. Someone she'd normally never notice. The lug nuts were tight, manufacturer tight, and his hands protested as he forced them loose. The interview was in 35 minutes now. 34. 33. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. Tom Bradley." He didn't look up, focusing on the rhythm of the work. Loosen, lift, remove, replace. This he knew how to do. This made sense. "I'm Victoria Hayes." She said it like he should recognize the name, but he didn't. "Why are you doing this?" Tom paused, glancing up at her. "Because you needed help." "But you're..." She gestured at his suit, and he understood. She'd noticed. Of course she had. "Late for something important?" He allowed himself a small smile, though it felt tight. "Yeah, but you'd be later." Most people would have kept driving. Tom fitted the spare tire onto the bolts, his hands moving with the muscle memory of 1,000 similar jobs. Most people probably would have known how to change their own tire. She laughed, unexpected and genuine. Fair point. The lug nuts tightened with satisfying clicks. Tom lowered the jack, stood, and brushed dirt from his knees. His hands were black with road grime now, and there was a streak of oil across his white shirt. Perfect. He checked his watch, a Timex his daughter had given him for his birthday, purchased with allowance money. 28 minutes until his interview. The office was 30 minutes away on a good day. Victoria was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Let me pay you, please, for your time." "No." Tom picked up his jacket, folding it carefully. Oil stains wouldn't come out anyway. "Just drive safe. That spare's not meant for highway speeds." "Tom, She reached for her purse. "At least let me give you my card. I appreciate it, but I'm good." He was already walking back to his car, because if he stayed one more second, he might tell her the truth, that he wasn't good, that he was 30 seconds from breaking down, that this small act of kindness might have just cost him and his daughter everything. "Thank you," she called after him. "Really, you're a good person." Tom raised a hand in acknowledgement without turning around. Good person. That and $3 might buy coffee. He slid behind the wheel of his sedan, started the engine on the third try, and pulled back onto the highway. In his rearview mirror, Victoria Hayes stood beside her Mercedes, watching him go. The office building loomed ahead 25 minutes later. All glass and steel, and the kind of perfection that made Tom feel like he'd tracked mud into a museum. He parked in visitor parking, checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. The oil stain had spread, his tie was crooked, and he had exactly 90 seconds to somehow not look like he'd just changed a tire on the side of the highway, and hurried through the revolving doors. The receptionist looked up with professional courtesy that died the moment she saw him. "Can I help you?" "Tom Bradley. I have an 11 o'clock with Mr. Richardson about the facilities manager position." She glanced at her computer, then at the clock. "Mr. Bradley, you're 40 minutes late. Mr. Richardson had another appointment. He waited 15 minutes. Her tone was the kind of polite that really meant, "Please leave." "You can reschedule through our website." Tom felt something crack in his chest, something he'd been holding together with hope and desperation. "Please. This job. I really need this job. 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes to explain." The receptionist's expression softened slightly, but her words didn't. "I'm sorry. Mr. Richardson is very particular about punctuality. It's company policy." Company policy. Tom nodded slowly, feeling the weight of those two words settle over him like a shroud. "Right. Of course. Thank you for your time." He walked back to his car on legs that felt disconnected from his body. The steering wheel was cool under his forehead as he sat in the parking lot, eyes closed, trying to remember how to breathe. Sophie's face filled his mind, her gap-toothed smile when he'd promised good news. The way she'd drawn a heart on his lunch bag with the words, "Good luck, Daddy," in crayon. How was he supposed to go home and tell her he'd thrown away their future for a stranger with a flat tire? The sedan started on the first try this time, which felt like the universe mocking him. Tom drove home on autopilot, barely seeing the roads, the other cars, the world that kept moving while his stood still. The apartment complex looked shabbier in the afternoon light, paint peeling on the stairwell. Someone's broken bicycle still chained to the rack after 3 months. Home. Sophie was at school. Good. That gave him a few hours to figure out what to say, how to explain that Daddy had made a choice. And now they might have to make a lot more choices, the kind that started with, "We can't afford," and ended with packed boxes and smaller spaces. Tom sat at their kitchen table, scarred wood he'd rescued from a curb and refinished himself, and opened his laptop. The job search sites glowed back at him, full of positions that wanted degrees he didn't have, experience in software he'd never used. He applied anyway, filling out forms with information that felt more hopeless with each submission. Age, 38. Education, high school diploma. Current employment, part-time construction work, $15 an hour. No benefits. The front door burst open at 3:15, and Sophie exploded into the apartment with the kind of energy only 8-year-olds possessed. Dad, how did it go? Did you get the job? Are we going to get a new place with my own room? Tom looked at his daughter, all wild blonde hair and missing front teeth, and absolute faith that her father could do anything, and felt something break inside him that he knew would never fully heal. Not yet, sweetheart, but I'm working on it. Her face fell, just for a second, before she plastered on a smile too old for her years. That's okay. I like this place anyway, and sharing a room with you is fun. Fun. Right. Because what 8-year-old girl didn't dream of sleeping on a roll-away bed in her father's bedroom because they couldn't afford a 2-bedroom apartment? Tom pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of school cafeteria and strawberry shampoo. How was school? Good. We learned about fractions, and I got a gold star on my spelling test. And Mrs. Anderson said I should join the art club, but I said I'd have to ask you first because it costs $20 for supplies. She said it casually, but Tom heard what she wasn't saying. She already knew the answer. We'll see, he said, which was parent code for probably not, and they both knew it. That evening, after Sophie was asleep, Tom sat in the dark living room with his phone, scrolling through the bank app that showed numbers he'd already memorized. Checking account, $432. Savings, 0. Rent due in 12 days, $950. He did the math again, as if it might change. It didn't. Even with his next paycheck from the construction site, they'd be short. Again. The phone buzzed in his hand, making him jump. Email notification. Probably another rejection, he thought. But opened it anyway because hope was a hard habit to break. The sender was unfamiliar. V. Hayes, HayesCorporation.com. Tom's finger hovered over the delete button. Spam, probably. Or he opened it. Mr. Bradley, I apologize for the unusual nature of this email. After our encounter this morning, I found myself unable to stop thinking about what you did. In my world, genuine kindness is rare enough that when I see it, I pay attention. I took the liberty of running your license plate to find your contact information. I'd like to offer you an opportunity to interview for a position at Hayes Corporation. This isn't charity. I don't do charity in business. This is me recognizing something my company needs: integrity. If you're interested, please respond at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Victoria Hayes, CEO, Hayes Corporation. Tom read it 3 times, certain he was missing something. CEO. The woman on the highway was a CEO. He Googled Victoria Hayes, Hayes Corporation, and felt his stomach drop. Hayes Corporation was one of the largest commercial real estate development companies in the state. Victoria Hayes wasn't just rich. She was magazine cover, Forbes list, owns half the downtown skyline rich, and she wanted to interview him. This had to be a mistake, or a scam. People like Victoria Hayes didn't hand out job opportunities to construction workers who changed their tires. Except, she had. She'd stood there on the highway and watched him work, and apparently decided something in that 15-minute interaction was worth this email. Tom looked at Sophie's closed bedroom door, then back at the phone. The rational part of his brain whispered about too good to be true offers and disappointment and not getting his hopes up again. But the part that was tired of failing his daughter, the part that had just watched another door slam in his face because he'd chosen to help someone, that part hit reply. Ms. Hayes, thank you for reaching out. I'd be honored to discuss any opportunities you think I might be qualified for. I'm available at your convenience. Tom Bradley. He sent it before he could overthink, then sat in the dark, wondering if he'd just made everything better or infinitely worse. The phone buzzed again, almost immediately. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Address attached below. Don't dress up. I've seen you in a suit. She'd added a smiley face emoji, which seemed surreal coming from a CEO. Tom exhaled slowly, feeling something unfamiliar stir in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as hope. The Hayes Corporation building made the place he'd interviewed at yesterday look like a garden shed. Tom stood on the sidewalk, neck craned back, counting floors until he lost track somewhere around 30. Glass and steel reached toward clouds, each window probably worth more than his entire apartment building. The lobby had actual trees growing inside it, and the security desk looked like something from a science fiction movie. Victoria's office had windows for walls, offering a view of the city that made Tom feel like he was standing in the sky. She sat behind a desk that was probably hand-carved by artisans, typing rapidly on a laptop. She looked different than she had on the highway, more polished, more CEO. But when she looked up and saw him, her smile was the same. "Tom, thank you for coming." She stood, walked around the desk, and offered her hand. Her grip was firm. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." Tom sat in a chair that probably cost more than his security deposit, trying not to feel like an imposter. "Ms. Hayes, I have to admit, I'm not sure why I'm here. Call me Victoria, and you're here because I need someone I can trust." She sat across from him, not behind her desk, which felt intentional. "Tell me about yourself, Tom. Not the resume version, the real version." So he did. He told her about Sophie, about losing his wife Rachel 4 years ago to cancer, about the construction work that paid the bills but offered no future, about the constant math of which bills to pay and which to defer. He told her about applying for better jobs and hitting the same walls over and over. No degree, no connections, no luck. He didn't mean to tell her so much, but something about the way she listened made the words keep coming. When he finished, Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Yesterday morning, I had a meeting that would determine whether Hayes Corporation landed the biggest development contract in company history. $50 million, 3 years of work, hundreds of jobs created. I was late because my driver called in sick at the last minute, and I don't know how to change a tire. Embarrassing, but true. When that tire blew, I thought I'd lost everything." She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city she helped build. "Then you stopped. You had every reason not to. You were late for something important. You didn't know me. You had nothing to gain. But you stopped anyway. You know what happened after you left?" Tom shook his head. "I made it to my meeting with 3 minutes to spare. The tire change took 15 minutes. I would have waited 45 for a tow truck. We got the contract. $50 million, Tom, because you decided to help a stranger." She turned back to him. "I spent last night looking into you. Called the construction company where you work. Spoke to your foreman. He said you're the best worker he has, that you show up early and stay late, that you could run the whole operation if you had the opportunity. That's generous of him, but I'm not offering you charity." Victoria's voice was firm. "I'm offering you a job. Director of Facilities Management, Hayes Corporation. You'd oversee maintenance and construction across all our properties. 15 buildings currently, 22 by next year. It's not an easy job. You'd be managing teams, budgets, contractors. But Tom, I've learned that character matters more than credentials. You can teach someone how to read a budget. You can't teach them to be a good person." Tom felt like the elevator was still rising, his stomach somewhere around floor 25. "I don't have a degree. I've never managed anything bigger than a 3-man crew. You have 20 years of construction experience. You have work ethic. You have integrity." Victoria pulled out a folder, slid it across the coffee table between them. "This is the offer. Take your time. Read it. Think about it. There's a salary number in there that I think you'll find fair." Tom opened the folder with hands that had started shaking again. His eyes found the number, and for a second, he forgot how to breathe. It was more than fair. It was more than 3 times what he made now. It was the kind of money that meant Sophie could have her own room and join the art club and stop worrying about things 8-year-olds shouldn't have to worry about. This is... He looked up at Victoria, searching for words that felt adequate. Why? Because yesterday, you made a choice. You chose kindness over opportunity. You chose someone else's emergency over your own future. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of person you are. She smiled. And because my company needs people who make those kinds of choices, we build things, Tom. Buildings, yes, but also communities, spaces where people live and work and raise their families. I want someone who understands that what we do matters beyond the bottom line. Tom looked down at the folder again, at the number that represented stability and security, and Sophie's art club, and so much more. When would I start? How's Monday? He laughed, surprised, and overwhelmed, and possibly in shock. Ms. Hayes, Victoria, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Or say you'll think about it and call me tomorrow. But Tom? She leaned forward, her expression serious. You earned this. Not because you changed my tire, although I'm grateful, but because you're exactly who you've proven yourself to be. Don't doubt that. Tom drove home in a daze, the folder sitting on the passenger seat like it might disappear if he didn't keep checking on it. Director of Facilities Management. He kept saying it out loud, trying to make it real. Him. Tom Bradley, high school graduate, widowed father, guy who'd been cutting it close on rent for 3 straight years. Sophie was at her friend Madison's house. Tom had traded babysitting with Madison's mom, an arrangement born of necessity and mutual single-parent solidarity. He had 3 hours before pickup. Instead of sitting in the quiet apartment trying to process what had just happened, he called his foreman. Miller Construction, this is Dave. Dave, it's Tom. Bradley, everything okay? Yeah, Tom paused, then plunged ahead. I need to give notice. 2 weeks if that works. I got another job. Silence. Then Dave laughed. Loud and genuine. Hayes Corporation, right? Lady called me yesterday, asked about you for 20 minutes. I told her the truth. You're too damn good for my crew, and I've been waiting for you to figure that out. His voice softened. I'm proud of you, Tom. You deserve this. Tom's throat tightened. Thanks, Dave, for everything. For taking a chance on me 4 years ago when nobody else would. You earned every hour. Now go show that fancy company what real work looks like. They talked logistics. Tom would work the next 2 weeks, train his replacement, finish the current project. Good terms, clean break. When Tom hung up, he felt the weight of finality settle over him. This was really happening. His life was about to change. He picked up Sophie at 5:30, and she came running out with paint in her hair and a smile that split her face. Dad, we got to paint and I made you something. Can't wait to see it. Tom knelt down to her level. Hey, kiddo, what would you say if I told you we might be moving soon? Her smile faltered. Moving? Where? Somewhere with more space. Maybe you could have your own room, with actual walls, not just a curtain. Sophie studied his face with the seriousness she'd inherited from her mother. Did you get a new job? Yeah, I did. She threw her arms around his neck with enough force to nearly knock him over. I knew it. I knew you would. You're the best dad, and now everybody else knows it too. Tom held his daughter, breathing in paint smell and strawberry shampoo, and felt tears he'd been holding back for 4 years finally start to fall. Love you, Sophie Bug. Love you more, Dad. Even when we were broke, I loved you more. They went apartment hunting that weekend, and Tom felt like he was moving through a dream. Places he'd never dared look at before suddenly appeared with the magic word, affordable, next to them. 2 bedrooms, dishwasher, laundry in unit. Things that seemed impossibly luxurious when you'd been counting quarters for the laundromat. Sophie fell in love with a place on the third showing. Second floor, lots of windows, a kitchen that actually had counter space. The bedroom she claimed had room for a desk and bookshelves, and she was already planning paint colors before Tom even started the application. The landlord called 2 days later with approval, and just like that, they had a home. Tom's first day at Hayes Corporation felt surreal. He wore new clothes, still practical, but without the frayed edges and permanent stains, and carried a laptop the company had sent him. Victoria met him at the elevator, coffee in hand, and a smile that suggested she was genuinely happy to see him. They spent the morning walking through systems and processes that made Tom's head spin: digital maintenance logs, contractor management software, budget forecasting tools. But when they got to the actual buildings, when he could see the work, touch the materials, talk to the crews, something clicked. This he understood. The crew foreman on site was skeptical at first, eyeing Tom's new clothes and clean hands with wariness. But when Tom asked about the electrical delays and suggested a sequencing change that would save 3 days, the man's expression shifted. "You've done this before," the foreman said. It wasn't a question. 20 years, Tom replied. "Just never wore a tie while doing it." By lunch, Tom had a stack of notes and a headache from trying to remember passwords. Victoria found him in his new office, actual office, with a door and a window and a desk that didn't wobble, staring at his computer like it might bite him. "Overwhelming?" she asked. "That's one word for it." "You'll find your rhythm. Give it time." She leaned against the doorframe. "For what it's worth, you impressed the crew this morning. They respect someone who knows the work." The first week was a blur of learning curves and small victories. Tom discovered he was good at reading people, at understanding what crews needed before they asked, at finding solutions that balanced budget with quality. He was terrible at email etiquette and kept forgetting his calendar, but he figured it out one step at a time. The second week, Tom tackled his first real crisis. A pipe burst at one of the older properties, flooding 3 floors of office space on a Sunday night. The emergency call came to his phone at 11 p.m. Tom was at the site in 20 minutes, still in the sweatpants he'd been wearing while helping Sophie with homework. The building superintendent met him in the lobby, water damage evident everywhere. "It's bad. Really bad." Tom assessed the situation with the calm that came from years of seeing things go wrong and fixing them anyway. Water was contained, but the cleanup would take days. The source was a corroded pipe that should have been replaced years ago. He spent the night coordinating emergency crews, arranging temporary workspace for affected tenants, and documenting everything. At 3 a.m., standing in a hallway that smelled like wet carpet, Tom called Victoria. She answered on the second ring, alert despite the hour. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad enough that we need to talk about deferred maintenance across all the older properties. This pipe's been waiting to fail for years." Tom walked her through his plan for both short-term fixes and long-term prevention. When he finished, Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do it. Whatever you need. Budget approval granted. And Tom, this is exactly why I hired you. You know what matters." By Monday morning, affected tenants were set up in temporary offices. Cleanup crews were working. And Tom had a comprehensive report on every building in the portfolio that needed similar preventive work. He presented it at the weekly operations meeting, half expecting pushback on the cost. Instead, Victoria forwarded it to the board with her full endorsement. The approval came through the same day. 3 months in, Tom had found his rhythm. The administrative parts that had seemed impossible now felt manageable. The maintenance overhaul was ahead of schedule. The crews respected him. The tenants were happier. And Sophie was thriving. Her room was painted purple, her choice, and covered in her artwork. She'd joined art club and school choir. She had friends who came over for playdates. She laughed more, worried less, was 8 years old in the way 8-year-olds should be. One evening, helping her with a school project about parents' careers, Sophie asked, "Dad, do you like your job?" Tom thought about it, really thought about it. "Yeah, Bug, I really do." "Is it because of the money?" She asked it innocently, but he heard the real question underneath. "The money helps," Tom said honestly. "But no, that's not why. I like it because I get to solve problems. I get to make buildings better, safer. I get to work with good people. And I get to come home to you without being exhausted all the time." Sophie nodded seriously. "Ms. Hayes sounds nice." "She is nice. But Sophie, she didn't give me the job. I earned it. There's a difference. Because you helped her with her tire. Because I showed her who I am. The tire was just how we met." 6 months in, Hayes Corporation landed another major contract, and the board approved expansion into 2 new cities. Victoria called Tom into her office to discuss the logistics. They'd need new facilities setups, new protocols, new everything. "I want you to lead the facilities planning for the expansion," Victoria said. "It's a big job, Tom. Bigger scope, bigger budget. You'd be traveling more, at least initially. Can you handle that?" Tom thought about Sophie, about the stability they'd built. "How much travel?" "Maybe 1 week a month for the first 6 months. After that, minimal. I'll need to talk to Sophie. Make sure she's okay with it." "But Victoria, if she is, yeah, I can handle it." Victoria smiled. "You're a good father. That's one of the things I admire most about you. You never forget what matters." "She's everything," Tom said simply. "Always has been." That night, he sat Sophie down and explained the opportunity. She listened with thoughtfulness that sometimes made her seem older than her years. "Will you be safe?" she asked finally. "Just flying to other cities for work. I'll call every night. And I'll be home every weekend." Sophie chewed her lip, thinking. "Mrs. Anderson says my art is good enough that I should enter the youth exhibition next spring. Would you be there for that?" "Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it for anything." "Then okay. You should do it. Because you're really good at your job, Dad." Tom pulled her into a hug, wondering how he'd gotten so lucky. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too tired to notice before." The expansion project consumed the next 8 months. Tom spent his weeks in unfamiliar cities, setting up operations, establishing protocols. He video-called Sophie every night, watching her practice her art over the screen, helping with homework long distance. The weekends home were intense, quality time packed into 2 days. But it worked. Sophie thrived with the independence, and the project succeeded beyond expectations. The new offices opened ahead of schedule and under budget. Victoria flew out for the ceremony, and Tom stood beside her, feeling both proud and slightly bewildered. They'd transformed empty spaces into functional workplaces that would employ hundreds of people. He'd done that, his planning, his execution. Later, Victoria pulled him aside. "You know the board wants to make you vice president of operations." Tom nearly choked on his drink. "What?" "They've been watching your work. They're impressed. And frankly, so am I." "You've exceeded every expectation, Tom. I've been here less than 2 years. And in that time, you've revolutionized how we approach facilities management, led a successful expansion, and built processes that actually work. Time's got nothing to do with it." Victoria's expression turned serious. "VP of Operations means you'd oversee all operational aspects of the company. Significant raise, equity, more responsibility. You'd be on the executive team. And Tom, it means I think you're ready." He thought about where he'd been 2 years ago, desperate, broke, convinced he'd failed. He thought about the choice he'd made on that highway. "Can I think about it?" "Take your time." "But Tom, you've already proven you can do this." Tom flew home that weekend and took Sophie to their favorite spot, a park bench overlooking the lake where they'd gone after Rachel died. It had become their place for big conversations. "They want to promote me again," Tom said. "Vice president?" Sophie was quiet, studying him with her mother's eyes. "Do you want it?" "I think so." "Yeah. But it means even more responsibility." "Dad, I'm 10 now. I can handle you being busy sometimes." She leaned against his shoulder. "Mom would be proud of you. I'm proud of you." Tom's throat tightened. "Yeah? Yeah. You're like a superhero, except instead of saving people from bad guys, you save them from bad buildings." She giggled, then turned serious. "Will you be happy if you do it?" That was the question, wasn't it? "Yeah, Bug. I think I would." "Then you should do it. We'll figure out the rest." He accepted the promotion the following Monday. The transition was smooth, partly because he'd already been doing half the job anyway. Tom discovered he was good at this, at leadership, at seeing the big picture, at making decisions that balanced people and profit. Sophie's art exhibition came that spring, and Tom kept his promise. He cleared his schedule and sat in a high school gymnasium surrounded by proud parents. Sophie's piece was called Building Dreams, a mixed media work showing their old apartment complex, the Hayes Corporation building, and a small figure with paint-stained hands bridging the gap. She won first place in her age category. Tom cried, right there in the gymnasium. When Sophie ran to him with her ribbon, he lifted her up like she was still 5 years old. "I'm so proud of you. We did good, Dad. Both of us." That summer, Victoria announced her retirement. Not immediate, but she wanted to step back. The board began searching for a new CEO. Tom tried not to think about how different things might be under new leadership. Victoria called him to her office 2 weeks before her announcement. "I recommended you," she said without preamble. Tom blinked. "For what?" "CEO. I recommended you to the board as my successor." "That's Victoria. I'm not qualified." "Tom, you built this operations division from nothing. You understand this company better than anyone. You care about the people, not just the profits. You make decisions based on what's right." She smiled. "You changed my tire and missed your interview because it was the right thing to do. That's who you are. That's who this company needs. I don't have an MBA. I don't have any degree. Neither did the founder of this company. He was a carpenter." Victoria leaned forward. "I'm not saying the board will choose you. They have other candidates. But Tom, you have my recommendation. The question is, do you want it?" Tom looked out at the city, at the buildings, at the skyline. Did he want to lead this? "Yeah," he said finally. "I want it." The board process took 3 months. Interviews, presentations, assessments. Tom competed against candidates with Ivy League degrees and decades of executive experience. He never pretended to be something he wasn't. When they asked about his background, he told the truth. When they questioned his qualifications, he showed them results. The call came on a Tuesday. "Mr. Bradley, this is Robert Winters, chairman of the Hayes Corporation Board. The board has voted to offer you the position of Chief Executive Officer." Tom leaned against the wall. "Thank you. Thank you. Your vision aligned perfectly with our goals. Victoria was right about you. Welcome to the executive suite." Tom made it to his office before his legs gave out. CEO. Him. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was happening. He called Sophie first. She answered breathless from recess. "Dad? They offered me the job. CEO." Her scream probably deafened half her class. "I knew it! Dad, that's amazing." "Love you, Bug. Love you more, Dad, even when you're a fancy CEO." The press release went out the next day. Tom Bradley, age 41, former construction worker, would be the next CEO of Hayes Corporation. The media loved it. The underdog story, The single dad. The tire change that changed everything. Tom gave 3 interviews and refused the rest. Victoria spent her final months teaching him everything: board politics, investor relations, the 1,000 small things that mattered. The night before her retirement and his first day as CEO, they shared expensive whiskey in her office. "Nervous?" Victoria asked. "Terrified." "Good. That means you understand the responsibility." She refilled both glasses. "Remember what I said your first day? Character matters more than credentials. When you're making decisions that affect thousands of people, remember who you are. Remember the man who stopped on the highway." Tom met her eyes. "Thank you for seeing something I couldn't see. Thank you for proving me right." Victoria raised her glass. "To new beginnings." Tom's first day as CEO started with Sophie. She made him breakfast and hugged him hard. "Go be awesome, Dad." The office felt different, or maybe he felt different. His first major decision came within 2 weeks. A contractor had cut corners, saving money but compromising safety. Tom called an emergency meeting, fired the contractor, ate the cost of repairs, and sent a company-wide memo. "We build things that last. We do it right, or we don't do it at all." The memo cost $2 million short-term. It earned respect from every employee who'd wondered if the company cared about more than money. 6 months in, Hayes Corporation posted record profits and was named one of the best companies to work for. Tom celebrated by taking Sophie on vacation, their first real vacation, to the beach. On their last night, watching sunset, Sophie said, "Dad, do you ever think about that day? The tire day? All the time. Would you do it again? If you knew it would make you miss the interview?" Tom thought about it. "Yeah, bug. I would. Because the interview wasn't the opportunity. The choice was. Stopping, helping, doing the right thing. That's what mattered. The rest just followed." Sophie nodded, satisfied. "Good. Because that's who you are." They sat in comfortable silence as stars appeared, and Tom felt grateful for a life transformed by one simple choice. Years later, interviewed for a business profile, the reporter asked what advice he'd give people trying to succeed. Tom thought about construction sites and tire changes, about Sophie and Victoria, about moments that mattered. "Stop thinking about climbing," he said. "Think about who you are when nobody's watching. Character isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in moments of decision, usually small ones, when you're scared or desperate or both." The reporter pressed for more. Secrets, tips, formulas. But Tom just smiled. "Be kind," he said. "Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The rest will figure itself out." And in his experience, it always did.